Anybody have a Bible question? I mean, I have something done, but I was just thinking, does anybody have a Bible question? Something you've been reading, or something that's been brought up in the preaching, or anything like that?
I've come across a couple in the last couple of days.
Sure.
But I didn't know we could ask. I mean, other than, when there's not a service. And I'm reading through, I just got done reading through Zechariah, and there was some
That's a
statements
wonderful
in
book.
there, and I thought,
Yeah. Do you remember what they are?
no.
Of course.
I'm looking to see if I could find what I had questioned.
Okay.
But,
Anybody else got one while she's looking?
We're talking about, I was reading there in Luke, we're talking about Zacharias and how he was unable to speak. And I've seen some accounts say that they think that he also couldn't hear or speak. What's your take on that? You think
No,
that he couldn't speak?
I think it's just that he couldn't speak, because that's all it says.
That's all it says. That's, I think too, and I was seeing commentaries.
And I guess I can see where they would get that from, because it says that they made signs to him.
That's what I was going to say.
And so they were writing stuff down to communicate to him.
Right.
So,
That's the part that confused me a little.
so I can get where they get that from, but it doesn't say that he's going to not be able to hear.
No, I was always taught that he just couldn't speak.
Right.
It says they were making signs to him, it says. And
Yeah,
I looked up
so-
the commentary said he may have been deaf too, and I'm thinking, you know what, I've never heard that preached, but I'm almost wondering if that's not a possibility. Because of that. Doesn't really make a difference, but.
Yeah, because all it says is that he'll be dumb and not able to speak. So it could be the fact that he's unable to speak, they could have assumed he's unable to hear. But it just says that he's unable to speak, so I don't know. But I could sympathize with that type of a view.
No, that's what I was thinking too. It doesn't say it.
Right.
But right, they could have assumed that because he couldn't speak, they assumed that he couldn't hear as well. But he couldn't. It seemed like he told them, "I can hear you talking." He just wrote back to them, "I can hear you talking." I don't
Right.
know. A lot of assumption there, but I can see where somebody.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. It's one of those things I'd never really thought about. But as soon as you said that, I could definitely understand where they get that from.
It doesn't make a difference in anything, but.
Right.
I'm curious.
It is one of those things.
Yeah, one of those things.
Yeah. Did you find it, Paula?
I'm still looking.
Still looking.
I stalled as
He,
long as I
he
could.
tried. He tried to stall me. Okay. Anybody else got a question? If not, we'll just jump right into this then. Okay. All right, well, let's go to Acts 20. And Paula, you can look that up, and you can feel free to ask me later. Okay?
Yeah, I think it's in this last section, in chapter 14, verse 9 and through 16.
Oh, you found it then?
Well, I was reading it this morning, and I was reading some verses that kind of go with it. And I'm thinking, what section in the Lord's setting up his kingdom in Jerusalem does all of this happen? And it's like, I thought once the kingdom came down that everything was going to be wonderful in Jerusalem and in Israel. But you can go ahead.
What chapter is it?
The 14th chapter of Zechariah and verse 9, I think down through about 15, I think it was. I've got a bunch of stuff underlined, and it's a little bit confusing because I thought people were supposed to be safe in Jerusalem.
Okay, so are you talking about there verse 12 through 14, where it talks about their eyes will consume away in their holes and stuff? Yeah, so this is going to take place at the initiation of the millennium. This is going to take place when Jesus descends to set up his kingdom.
Okay, because to me, it sounds like what happens to a body when an atomic bomb goes off.
It does. And some people think that that's what it's referring to.
Mhm.
But the connection here is actually to Christ coming. So at the Battle of Armageddon, when Jesus comes down, and it says that he's going to actually trample his enemies, this is what that's going to look like.
What verses is that in?
Down to verse 12,
Of chapter 9?
yeah, 14.
14, yeah.
It says, "This shall be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. And it shall come to pass in that day that a great tumult from the Lord shall be among them, and they shall lay hold, every one on the hand of his neighbor, and his hand shall rise up against the hand of his neighbor." So they're going to fight against each other.
So are these people outside of Israel?
No, they're in Israel.
Okay.
So this is something that's going to begin at the northern part of Israel, which is the Valley of Megiddo. And then there's the Valley of Jehoshaphat that goes all the way down right to the east of Jerusalem, and then it's going to go all the way down into Edom. And so down to Bozrah. And so Bozrah is where Petra is.
Okay, yeah.
And Petra is where a good share of Israel is going to find refuge.
Right.
The believing remnant is going to find refuge during the tribulation period. So it's going to be, as what the Antichrist is going to do, is he's going to gather the armies of the earth together in Megiddo. And then he's going to travel down that valley. Some of them are going to stay behind. They're going to fight against Jerusalem. There's going to be a battle going on at Jerusalem. It's going to be laid siege against. But then the rest of the army is going to continue down that valley. And as they're approaching Petra, that's when the faithful remnant is going to look up and they're going to call out to Christ. And that's when Christ is going to appear. And when he comes, he's actually going to come to Bozrah first, come up that valley, destroying all of his enemies, all the way up to the Mount of Olives. And it's when he stands on the Mount of Olives that the Mount of Olives is then going to split.
Yeah, okay.
So this is what's taking place there. Because it says there in verse 14, "Judah shall also fight at Jerusalem, and the wealth of all the heathen round about shall be gathered together, gold, silver, and apparel in great abundance." So basically they're going to take the spoils of all their enemies as a result of this. "And so shall be the plague of the horse, of the mule, of the camel, of the ass, all the beasts that shall be in these tents as this plague. And it shall come to pass that every one that is left of all the nations which come against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And it shall be that whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain." And it's interesting. It's like the Lord already knows. This is how Egypt's going to be. And he says, "And if the family of Egypt go not up, and come not, that have no rain, there shall be the plague, wherewith the Lord will smite the heathen that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles." And so that's where we see people are going to go, all the nations, believing and unbelieving, because there's going to be unbelieving people during the millennium. Not necessarily at the beginning of the millennium, but at some point during the millennium, there's going to be more than one generation. And so the unbelievers are still going to have to come. It's going to be a government mandate for these people to come to Jerusalem every year for the Feast of Tabernacles.
Wow, won't that be crowded?
Yeah. And if they don't come up, then a curse is going to be upon that kingdom, and they're not going to receive any rain, so they're not going to be able to harvest, grow crops, or anything like that for that year. Yeah, it'll be something. See, because during the millennium, perfect justice is going to be meted out according to the law. It'll be the only time in human history that there is absolutely perfect, unbiased judgment. That's going to be something. Because really we have no idea what that's like. Any other questions?
So during the millennium,
Yeah.
you're gonna have people born into the millennium.
Yes.
Unsaved.
Correct.
That.
Yep.
People that never wind up believing.
Correct.
So, is it reasonable to assume that during the millennium, when a crime happens, that it's going to be immediately taken care of? I mean, like.
Very quickly, I think Matthew chapter 5, let's look over to Matthew chapter 5. Because when Jesus, so considering the context here, this is where, when we get into Matthew's gospel, especially the Sermon on the Mount, so there's a lot of debate over the Sermon on the Mount. You know, if you have a Schofield study Bible, which I think Schofield for the most part is one of the better study Bibles, between Schofield and Ryrie, I think those are probably two of the better ones. But, so Schofield, he has a note in there that I think many people have taken the wrong way, and maybe he means it the wrong way. I think he's more of the persuasion that the Sermon on the Mount is only for the millennium. I don't think that's the case. I do think that it is primarily for the millennium, but it has present-day implications. So the kingdom has not yet been set up, right? But we are the kingdom. We're the citizens of that kingdom, and so we are to apply the principles of Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7. These are things that we apply to our lives. But there are some things that we can't apply to our lives right now in exact fulfillment. For instance, if we go to, let me see here. Yeah, so verse 23. Well, verse 22. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council. Raca means vain fellow. You know, you're worthless. Shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, thou fool, shall be in danger of what? Have you ever called somebody a fool?
My Grandma Seeger, the preacher, he said that's one thing that I remember him telling me this back when I was a little boy. He said that's one thing I have never called anybody. That's the verse he went back to because of that verse right there. He said I will never call somebody.
And so now notice what he says here. So obviously we see here. And have you ever been angry with somebody without a cause? You ever been taken to court over it? Not generally. I mean, not unless you broke something and refused to replace it or something like that, right? But here he says if you're angry without a cause, you're in danger of the judgment. You're going to go to judgment over that. But notice verse 23. Therefore, if thou bring thy gift to the altar. Now, this is not talking about coming up to the front of the church and praying. I've actually heard this verse used that way, but that is not what that's talking about. That is talking about bringing an animal sacrifice to the altar in Jerusalem. So he says, if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath aught against thee, leave there thy gift before the altar, and go thy way, first be reconciled to thy brother, and then come and offer thy gift. So now notice, that is not something we can fulfill exactly. Right? I mean, are we supposed to go to Jerusalem if we have something against somebody? Are we going to Jerusalem to offer sacrifice? And it's like, oh man, so-and-so. I mean, how inconvenient would that be? You're going from Michigan to Jerusalem to offer a sacrifice. You get to the altar, it's like, oh man, brother so-and-so. Oh, he was upset with me about, I need to go back. I mean, how inconvenient would that be? But that's the way it's going to be at some point.
But how expensive that will be.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long ways to Israel, and how do you get cattle and stuff on here?
Well, you see, and this is something that the law provided for. If one of the things God told Moses, he said, tell the children of Israel, if you have to go make the sacrifice, if it's too far for you, then what you do is you sell your cattle, and you take that money, and then you go, and then you purchase it in Jerusalem. See, that's what was supposed to be going. Let me get back to that, okay? So and then notice verse 25. Agree with thine adversary quickly, whilst thou art in the way with him, lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and thou be cast into prison. You ever had an argument with somebody and not reconciled? Do you go to jail for that? Someday you will.
I'm thinking I gotta keep my 40 acres.
And so then Jesus says, Verily I say unto thee, thou shalt by no means come out thence till thou hast paid the utmost farthing. So, the idea is that during the millennium, what was the question? Wayne, you asked the question, didn't you? Do you remember what that question was initially? Or did you ask the question? You asked the question. Okay, so the question was... immediate justice. So here we see immediate justice because just the fact that you have something against your brother, if you're angry without a cause, you are in danger of going to judgment over that. So it's not even just going to be an issue of timing. It's going to be the fact that your heart is going to be manifested and known to the degree that you will be brought into judgment based upon what's going on in your heart. So we're talking perfect justice.
So your heart's going to be red.
Yes. But you see, this is going to be people who are unglorified. Because those who have been raptured, they will be in completely glorified bodies. We're not going to have the issue of sin anymore. That's going to be gone. We're going to be as righteous and holy practically as Jesus is. So that won't be an issue for us. We're actually going to be the ones probably, when it talks about the judge and the officer, that's probably going to be us. But to finish that question about the offerings at Jerusalem. So they could sell the offering wherever they were, what they were going to bring, get the money for it, and then go to Jerusalem, and then he says you can buy whatsoever your soul lusteth after. So if you were going to offer an ox, or if you were going to offer lambs, or if you were going to offer turtle doves or whatever, then you could purchase that there. This is what was supposed to be going on at the temple. Remember, Jesus goes in and he throws over the tables of the money changers and stuff. It's not because they were selling stuff. Some people take that and say, oh, you can't sell anything. Jesus wasn't upset because they were selling stuff. What he was upset about is the fact that they were making profit off of what they were selling. That was the issue. So what they had instituted was a temple tax. And so when you came in, there was only a certain coinage that you could use at the temple, which was higher in cost in exchange than what you were getting for the sale of your offering. And so that's what they were exchanging. That's why he says he threw over the tables of the money changers. It wasn't the fact that they were selling stuff, it's just that they were selling it not for the same price, they were selling it for a profit for themselves. And so Jesus was upset about that. Does that make sense?
The coin weights they were using.
Unjust weights and unjust balance. Yeah, absolutely. He was pretty upset about that. Anybody else got a question? This is good. This is good.
You start thinking about the lane, you start thinking about glorified bodies.
That's got to be something, isn't it?
Yeah, when we come back, reasonable to assume we're going to be living over there near Jerusalem.
Actually, I don't think that's going to be the case.
Well, and that's why I said that, because you said something about live in Michigan and travel all the way.
Right.
So is it of your opinion that we won't? I mean, we don't know where.
I think we will go there. We will go there regularly.
But you're not thinking we're going to live.
I don't think I think during the millennium, the world geographically is going to be very similar to what it is now until the new heaven, new earth. It's going to be very similar geographically. People are still going to have to plow, plant fields. Remember, the swords are going to be turned into plowshares. But the weather will be perfect. And we won't have any Democrats in Michigan either. They'll all be monarchists. But the world is going to function very similar to what it is now. People are going to be all over the place. We're going to be distributed all over the place. In fact, we probably, if we're from Michigan, we'll probably come back to Michigan. Just some assumption there, but because during the millennium, we are going to be very much known the way we're known. Things are going to be similar in that sense, although we will be in glorified bodies, so we're not going to be aged. You know, the effects of age and stuff like that won't be upon us. The effects of sin won't be upon us. You know, we're not going to be subject to death or anything like that. The only people that will be subject to death are those who refuse to believe on Jesus Christ up to a certain point.
So that leads to the other question of, people thinking there's only 100 years people are going to be able to accept. I think we talked about
Yeah.
only have 100 years to accept the Lord, not 1,000 like most of us have been.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's going to be, I think they're going to have 100 years, and then after that 100 years, they're going to experience God's wrath if they don't receive Christ. Right. I could be wrong. Probably am. But, right, that just seems to be the plainest reading of that passage, is that when a person dies at 100 years, they're going to be thought accursed. This person has done something wrong. And maybe that's not at all what that's talking about. I don't know for sure.
Is there a clear, whole can of worms now?
Thank you.
Is it reasonable, well, is it reasonable to assume, who knows what transportation is going to be like at that time?
Right.
Are there going to be car wrecks and people dying?
I don't think so. I don't think there's going to be vehicles. I think when God, I think during the tribulation, God's going to wipe out the power grid. And I don't think he has any intention of it coming back.
Somehow, there's not going to be death up until a person at least has 100 years to accept Christ.
Yep.
And after that, they're going to die, and it's going to be in his hands, not
Yep.
any outside, not a car accident or a plane crash or
Right.
somebody shooting somebody, or that stuff's going to be gone.
Right.
Crime as we know it now is not going to be, or will it?
No, there'll be time. There will always be time.
But the crimes that are committed.
Oh, crime.
Crime. Are the crimes we know now not going to be, because there's not going to be somebody that's 50 years old being held up by a gunpoint, shot and killed, because they should have 100 years to be able to accept.
Yeah, I don't
So,
think,
the
I don't,
crime thing
I
is-
don't, I don't know that stuff's going to go on. I think justice is going to be so perfect during that time. The issue that people are going to have to most deal with is the fact that they conform outwardly, but they never believe. I think that's going to be the issue. And so, I mean, are there going to be things that go on? Oh, absolutely. I mean, people are going to sin. There's still going to be sin. Still going to be sin. But I don't think it's going to be quite manifest the same as it is today. It's going to be under a tight rein.
How can you understand how people can see Christ? How, I mean, if you can see him, however we're going to see him, how can you, I mean, how can you even understand how somebody,
Same with the children of Israel. How can you go through the Red Sea and then the next event, oh, you brought us out here to die? Well, it seems like that event back there kind of disproves that. Could have just closed you up in the Red Sea.
we don't need a miracle to believe. It'd be kind of cool to see a miracle.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we do see miracles, we just don't get credit when friends do, but to see something like the Red Sea part, or,
That just goes to show how desperately wicked the human heart is, that Christ can be on earth and perform his miracles, and people have to come every year, see him in his glory, and they say, meh. It's just unreal. I think that's Isaiah 66. 65 verse, it's 65. Yeah, it's 65. So, verse 17, he says, "For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered nor come into mind." So that's the purpose. So that's not describing the millennium, that's describing the end result. So the millennial reign, is the preparation for the new heaven, new earth. So he's saying this is the goal, and that's why he starts off verse 18. But, term of contrast, but be ye glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem a rejoicing, and her people a joy. Obviously, something that's never happened before. This is what's going to take place during the millennium. "And I will rejoice in Jerusalem and join my people. The voice of weeping shall be no more heard in her, nor the voice of crying." So Jerusalem is going to become a place of absolute peace. Boy, I bet they're wishing for that right now, aren't they? Verse 20, "There shall be no more thence an infant of days, nor an old man that hath not filled his days." So people aren't going to die early, and they're not going to die young. There's not going to be any preemie births or miscarriages or anything like that. Everything's going to work just like it is. Every baby that comes to this world is going to reach a full age. "For the child shall die 100 years old. But the sinner, being 100 years old, shall be accursed. And they shall build houses and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat the fruit of them. They shall not build and another inhabit." So you're not going to work the fields and somebody else come through and steal it from you. So that's that verse there in verse 20. Now that we're talking about it, this is kind of, "The child shall die 100 years old." So at 100 years old, he'll still be thought a child. "But the sinner, being 100 years old, shall be accursed."
So is it somebody gets saved during the millennium, would they continue to live 1,000
Yes,
years?
yes, they would continue to live 1,000 years. And that's one of the purposes of the millennium. So think about this. 2 Peter says, one day was with the Lord as what? 1,000 years. And 1,000 years is what? One day. Okay? So now, think about this. God tells Adam not to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And if he does eat it, what does he say? "In the day that you eat thereof, you shall surely die." Now, one of the things you find when you read through Genesis chapter 5, everybody dies. Adam, all the way down to be Lamech, right? Dies. None of them reach 1,000 years old. Not one of them. Methuselah came close, 969 years. He came close. But nobody could reach that full 1,000 years. But during the millennium, the righteous will. They will fulfill that day. And there won't be death. Right. In fact, probably won't even need it during the millennium, because the pain and suffering that comes with childbearing is probably going to be gone. Because those aspects of the curse are going to be lifted during the millennium. There won't be welfare.
They don't even have to go through childbirth pain. They may really be spitting them out then.
Well, and So we wonder, that's legitimate, because you wonder how in the world in 1,000 years can the entire world populate like that, where the entire world is going to be repopulated. Well, the curse, those aspects of the curse are going to be lifted. So, I mean, they're just going to be able, at some point, they're just going to eventually start walking out. Yep.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, Noah was 600, I think, when he started having kids. Started having kids. And only had 3. I mean, I think it was kind of had 3 until after the flood, and so I think it was kind of cutting down. That's part of the reason the lifespan dropped so much, is because as we age, our genetics stop reproducing the way that they're supposed to, and they begin to break down more. So the older you are when you have children, you pass on those genes to your children. That's one of the reasons it's so difficult for a mother and for the child when the mother is older, is because the genetics that are being passed on are not going to be as healthy as if they were in their 20s, late teens, or up to their early 30s. And so you figure if you're waiting until you're 600 to start having children, there's going to be some breakdown of that's passed on, and that's what the human race started with after the flood. And so that's why you see an immediate decline in the age that people are able to live to after. Just a side note, that doesn't have anything to do with the millennium, but that will be gone. That will be gone during the millennium. It's going to be a very interesting time. Very interesting time. Anything else? Oh, I know. We can go on and on and on and on. Right. Right. Yeah. On the millennium. That would be fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got a book in my library. It's over 600 pages, and it's all about one subject. That's the kingdom. Over 600 pages. Goes through every single passage where it's mentioned. Just some light reading.